They said no maid ever lasted in the Morrison mansion. It wasn't just gossip. It was survival advice, passed in whispers across beauty salons, church pews, and bus stops. That house on Crestwood Drive, women would murmur. It looks like heaven from the street, but step inside, and you'll learn why people run. The house itself was a city landmark. White stone walls gleamed under the sun. Roses bloomed in carefully manicured gardens. At night, the fountains glowed with lights, water dancing like liquid diamonds. But beneath the beauty lurked a reputation no paycheck could erase. The Morrisons were one of the wealthiest families in Atlanta. Daniel Morrison, the CEO of a financial empire, was rarely home, his name splashed across magazines and business journals. His wife, Victoria Morrison, ran the mansion. And every maid who had walked through those doors had left with the same story: fear, humiliation, and sometimes deportation. And now, Angela Carter stood at those gates. Angela was 32, with tired brown eyes that had seen too much and hands that bore the marks of years of labor. She wasn't naive. She had heard every warning. But her rent was overdue, her son Marcus needed new school shoes, and her mother's prescription bottles were running out. She couldn't afford to say no. Before I take you deeper into this story, let me ask you, what would you do if you had no choice but to work in a place where your dignity was stripped away daily? Would you endure the humiliation, or would you walk away hungry? Drop your answer in the comments, I really want to know. Angela pressed the intercom button. The iron gates groaned open, and she stepped inside. Her footsteps echoed on the long driveway, flanked by hedges trimmed like soldiers in formation. The front doors opened before she could knock. Victoria Morrison stood there. She was beautiful in a way that felt cold, unapproachable. Tailored beige dress, diamond studs at her ears, blonde hair pulled into a perfect bun. But her eyes were what froze Angela in place. They were sharp, assessing, as though already finding faults in her. "So," Victoria said, voice smooth but laced with ice. "You're the new one." Angela cleared her throat. "Yes, ma'am. Angela Carter. The agency." "I don't care what the agency said," Victoria interrupted, her tone clipped. She crossed her arms. "Listen carefully, Angela. You work when I say, how I say. And if I ever feel like you've overstepped, I'll make one call, and you'll be on the first plane back to wherever you came from. Do we understand each other?" Angela stiffened. She was American-born, but she knew better than to argue. The threat wasn't about facts. It was about power. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. Victoria's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Good. Come in. Don't make me regret this." The inside of the mansion was breathtaking. Marble floors gleamed like water. Chandeliers sparkled with crystals. Portraits lined the halls, their subjects staring down like silent judges. But there was no warmth. No photos of family vacations. No laughter bouncing off the walls. Only silence and the echo of Angela's footsteps. Then she heard a small voice. "Hi." Angela turned. At the top of the staircase stood a little girl, maybe 7 years old, in a pale blue dress. She clutched a stuffed bunny, her hazel eyes wide with curiosity. Angela's face softened. "Hello there. I'm Angela." She crouched a little. "I'll be helping out around here." The girl descended the stairs slowly, clutching the railing. When she reached Angela, she tilted her head. "Do you like dolls?" Angela chuckled. "I do. Do you?" The girl nodded eagerly. "Maybe we can play later." "Mommy never plays with me." Angela's heart tightened. But before she could answer, Victoria's voice sliced through the hall. "Emily. Stop bothering her. She's not here to play. She's here to work." Emily flinched, but her small hand slipped into Angela's. She didn't let go. The first week was a lesson in survival. On Monday, Victoria criticized her cooking. Too much salt. Do you want us dead of high blood pressure? On Tuesday, it was the laundry. These lines aren't straight. My husband wears suits worth more than your life. Fix it. On Wednesday, it was her cleaning. You call this dusting? Were you raised in a barn? Angela bit her tongue each time. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than defending herself. But at night, the house told a different story. Little Emily would tiptoe into Angela's room, bunny in hand. Can you tell me a story before bed? Angela would sit on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair, whispering stories her own mother used to tell. Emily would fall asleep with a smile, her small fingers tangled in Angela's. Those moments gave Angela strength. One evening, Angela stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when Victoria entered. Don't hover, Victoria snapped, watching her hands. You look like a nervous wreck. Angela swallowed her words. Victoria leaned closer, her perfume sharp. Don't get comfortable. Do you know how many women came before you? They all thought they'd last. None of them did. Angela met her gaze for a second too long. She saw something in Victoria's eyes, not just cruelty, but satisfaction. She enjoyed the fear she caused. Angela lowered her eyes quickly, but inside, a quiet voice whispered, I won't give her the satisfaction of breaking me. At night, Angela thought of Marcus. She remembered his laughter when he chased fireflies in the backyard. She remembered the way he hugged her tightly before school, whispering, Don't work too hard, Mom. Her heart ached. She missed him terribly. But she knew why she was here. She whispered to the photo on her phone, just a few more months. Just enough to get ahead. Then I'll leave this place behind. But deep down, she wondered. Would she be able to leave on her own terms? Because already, she felt the house tightening around her, like a trap. Every whisper she'd heard about the Morrisons echoed louder in her mind. And though Emily's smile gave her hope, Victoria's shadow loomed larger every day. Angela wasn't broken yet. But she could feel the cracks forming. And part of her knew, it was only a matter of time before something snapped. By the second week, Angela realized the mansion didn't run on clocks, it ran on fear. Time here didn't move forward, it circled like a hawk. Breakfast at 7 o'clock sharp, floors gleaming by 8:30, fresh flowers replaced before noon, napkins folded with knife-edge precision by 4 o'clock, Emily in bed by 8:15 whether she was tired or not. And threaded through every minute was Victoria Morrison's voice, cold, precise, and always near enough to catch a mistake. The rules were never posted anywhere, but everyone knew them. Don't be heard unless spoken to. Don't be seen unless summoned. Don't remind the lady of the house that you are human. Angela moved with quiet feet and steady breaths, learning the house like a battlefield. The chandelier in the foyer hummed, the sub-zero fridge sighed when it sealed, the library's French doors stuck unless you lifted as you pushed. She catalogued it all, because one day in the Morrison house taught you what mattered, avoid surprises and avoid Victoria. Mornings began in the kitchen. Mrs. Patel, the cook, wore her gray hair in a tight bun and kept her fingers moving faster than thought. She worked in whispers and side glances, her eyes telling you what her mouth could not. Toast corners, not halves, she murmured to Angela, sliding a tray of brioche toward her. And the eggs, yolk sunset, not sunrise. Angela blinked. Sunset? Just a little run, Mrs. Patel said, tilting the pan so the yolks blushed and trembled. She'll say they're raw if they're too bright. She'll say they're overcooked if they hold. Sunset. Trust me. The driver, Javier, came in from the garage door, cap in hand, the morning chill folded into his jacket. Traffic's ugly on Ponce, he said softly. If the lady asks why we're 10 minutes late, I didn't say that. Mrs. Patel lifted a brow. You didn't say anything. He smiled, tired and kind. Exactly. The kitchen always felt like a church before service. Quiet, hallowed, everyone praying the day wouldn't turn on them. Angela plated fruit so perfectly it looked fake. She wiped the rims of porcelain cups with a cloth dampened in lemon water because Mrs. Patel swore it made fingerprints disappear. At 7:03, Victoria's heels clicked down the corridor. The click wasn't just sound, it was announcement. The room tightened. Angela stepped back from the island, hands folded. Good morning, Victoria said, to the air, to the crystal, to herself. Never to the staff. She slid onto the end of the long breakfast banquette and inspected the spread as if luxury were a test she might fail. Toast is uneven, she said, even though the toast was a geometry lesson. And the melon, she speared a piece with a fork, held it to the light, too wet. She let it fall back on the plate. The melon did not splash. It wouldn't have dared. Angela swallowed. I'll dry the slices more next time, ma'am. Victoria's eyes shifted, pinning her. Next time. There is no next time if there's a last time, Angela. From the hallway, a small voice, morning. Emily shuffled in with her bunny, hair a sleepy cloud. Angela's shoulders dropped a fraction as the girl climbed beside her. For you, Angela said, putting down a small cup of strawberries. I saved the ones that look like hearts. Emily's grin was like a lit match in a dark room. They do look like hearts. She glanced at her mother, then back to Angela, lowering her voice. Thank you. Victoria set her cup down too carefully. Emily, napkin in your lap. You're not a child. I'm 7, Emily said, placing the napkin anyway. Exactly. Angela reached for her own breath and kept it quiet. The house had staff, but no one belonged. Mrs. Patel retreated to spices and steel. Javier disappeared into the garage like smoke. A lawn man in a sun-bleached cap kept his distance, cutting hedges into hedges. The housekeeper from weekdays past, an older woman named Sandra, had lasted 4 months. I used to stand in the shower and count to 60 with my eyes open, she once told Angela when she returned to pick up a forgotten sweater, voice soft and cracked. Because if I blinked, I'd cry. And crying meant you weren't ready to work. Why did you leave? Angela asked. Sandra looked up at the mansion, at the windows with their deep lashes of trim. Because I started dreaming in whispers. And I wanted my life back in sound. Those words lodged in Angela's ribs like a splinter. Tuesdays were piano lesson days. Ms. Lane, the teacher, wore perfume like a promise and clapped with patient hands. Emily's fingers fluttered over the keys, hesitant and sweet. Angela stood in the doorway, invisible. She learned to be furniture that remembered. Practice scales, Ms. Lane said, tapping a measure. Even when no one is listening. I'll listen, Angela said before she could stop herself. 3 heads turned, Ms. Lane, surprised, Emily, bright. Victoria, who had appeared without sound, stone. You will do your job, Victoria said, smooth as a blade. And leave instruction to professionals. Angela's tongue felt thick. Yes, ma'am. That night, Emily crept into the small staff hallway, sock feet silent. She carried a folded sheet of staff paper. I wrote a song, she whispered to Angela, holding it up. The notes wobbled and leaned on the lines. It's called, Don't Leave. Angela looked at the title until it blurred. Play it for me tomorrow, she said. I'll be listening. Emily nodded fiercely, like a soldier taking an oath. Every cruelty in the Morrison house came in 2 sizes, the one you could see, and the one you carried. The visible cruelties were clean, comments filed into Angela's day like paperwork. You missed a corner, you don't know how to fold a fitted sheet, my friends are coming, try not to look exhausted. But the hidden ones, those were the kind that hung behind your eyes. On Thursday, Victoria stood in the kitchen doorway and watched Angela chop carrots. "Where are you from?" she asked, as if the question were harmless. "Atlanta, ma'am," Angela said, sliding the chop into neat stacks. "Before that?" "Savannah." "Before that?" Angela felt the ground float. "Georgia, ma'am." "All the way down?" Victoria smiled with only one side of her mouth. "Ha!" She reached for a bottle of imported water, uncapped it. "I would have guessed farther." Angela's hand paused over the cutting board. The knife stayed still. She didn't look up. "Is something wrong?" Victoria asked after a beat, delighting in the tightrope she'd stretched. "No, ma'am," Angela said. Then she chopped the next carrot to a metronome beat and thought of the hospital nurse who had placed Marcus in her arms 10 years ago and said, "He looks like you," and how that had been the truest sentence she'd ever heard. Saturdays were park days when the weather behaved. Javier loaded the SUV, Mrs. Patel packed neat boxes of snacks, Angela gathered sunscreen, wipes, band-aids, the small things that keep small disasters small. At the neighborhood playground, the world was color and squeak, swings, slides, a carousel spun by panting fathers. Angela kept her eyes on Emily and her body between the girl and anything that moved too fast. Mother mode without the title. "Angela," Victoria said, standing beside the bench, sunglasses a mirror that bounced Angela's face back at her. "Yes, ma'am. I have a charity brunch next week. You will know how to serve caviar without covering the taste." "Yes, ma'am. You will not speak to my guests. You will not hover. You will never turn your back on a room." Angela flicked her gaze to the swing, empty. Panic like a flare. She found Emily at the monkey bars, legs swinging, hair stuck to her cheek. Relief punched the breath back into her. "Are you listening?" Victoria asked. "I am," Angela said, eyes fixed on the child. "I always am." Victoria tilted her head. "We'll see." On the drive home, Emily fell asleep, Bunny wedged under her chin. Angela turned in her seat and watched the steady rise and fall of the little girl's chest. She had braided that hair at dawn. She had tucked that bunny into the crook of that elbow. She had saved a strawberry shaped like a heart for that mouth. Her throat tightened with a feeling that had no name, a mix of love and dread and something like a promise she hadn't spoken out loud. Javier glanced in the rearview mirror. "You got kids?" he asked softly. "One," Angela said, her voice going gentle around the number. "Marcus." 10. "Good age," he said. "Still loves you with his whole face." Angela smiled at the window, where the city slid by in glass and sky. "Yeah. Why you don't bring him to work one day?" Javier said, half joking, half aching. Angela laughed once, small and round as a pebble. "Because I like keeping my heart where it can't be stepped on." Javier nodded, eyes back on the road. "Yeah. That." The charity brunch turned the mansion into a stage. Florists arrived at 7, a rental's truck wheezed at the curb, a woman with a clipboard called out seat numbers like coordinates. Angela steamed linen until the room breathed fog. She placed chargers and crystal and silver according to a diagram that left no room for air. "Remember," Victoria said, walking the perimeter like a general, "no fingerprints. And if you bring plates from the left, you take from the left. Do not invent new choreography in my home." "Yes, ma'am." When the guests arrived, heels thin as threats, suits that whispered when they moved, Angela became motion. Pour, pass, pivot. She made herself a background color. "Isn't she new?" a woman with red lipstick murmured to Victoria, eyes flicking to Angela as if she were a painting hung too low. "For now," Victoria said, reaching for her champagne. "They all are." Another guest laughed softly, as if at a private joke. Daniel appeared for the toast, late and golden, apology smile locked in place. He kissed his wife on the cheek with the ceremony of a signature and clinked his glass. "Community matters to us," he said, "eyes on donors, not the staff. We're building something that lasts." Angela thought of the sentence and held it loosely, like glass that might be sharp. At the end of the event, when the sound finally fell off the walls, Angela stood in the pantry filling a rack with polished glasses. Her hands moved automatically, her head was a slow tide of noise and quiet. "Angela," Victoria said from the door. Angela turned. "Yes, ma'am." "You placed the wrong floral at seat 8. Angela replayed the table map in her mind. Seat 8 was hydrangea, ma'am. Blue, low vase. "Lilac," Victoria said, smiles soft and cruel. "Low lilac." Angela knew she was right. She also knew what Victoria needed. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "It won't happen again." A beat, then, "It had better not." Victoria took a step in, closing the space until perfume and pressure were the same thing. "You should remember something, Angela." Her voice lowered. "You are here because I allow it. You stay because I say so. And you leave when I decide." Angela kept her eyes on the stainless steel edge of a tray. She could see her face in it, small, contained, balanced by the line. "Yes, ma'am." When she was alone again, she pressed her palms flat to the cold counter until her heartbeat climbed down from her throat. She texted her mother 5 words, "I'm okay. How's Marcus?" Her mother sent back a picture, Marcus on the couch, socks mismatched, a bowl of cereal in his lap, thumbs up double wide. "We're fine. We love you." Angela wiped a tear with the heel of her hand and went back to stacking glass. The house took little bites. That's how it worked. It never swallowed you whole. It just nibbled, your voice, your sleep, your laughter. Until you realized you'd gone quiet. At night, Angela lay awake, staring at the ceiling where light from the garden made the shadows move like water. She listened for Emily's small feet in the hall. She listened for Victoria's heels. Sometimes both came. Only one ever stopped at her door. "Do you think I'll be an astronaut?" Emily whispered one night, cheeks pink from tooth-brushing, bunny damp where she'd hugged it with wet hands. "I think you'll be what you practice being," Angela said, tucking her in. "Astronauts practice." "What do you practice?" Emily asked, eyes blinking slower and slower. Angela smoothed the blanket. "Staying." Emily's mouth tugged down, sleep nearly taking her. "Please don't leave." Angela sat there until the room grew blue. "I won't," she said. She meant it as hard as she could. In the hall, the grandfather clock told the quarter hour like a judge. A near miss came on a warm afternoon, not at the park but at the pool. The surface shivered with sunlight. Angela stood with a towel and a rule book in her head, no running. No jumping without looking. No games near the deep end. "Mom, watch." Emily called, standing on the first step, water at her shins. Victoria scrolled her phone, sunglasses like silver plates. "1 second. "Mom," Emily said again, softer now. Angela stepped closer. "I'm watching, baby." Emily smiled and pushed off the step, thin legs scissoring. She wasn't strong yet, but she was brave. Her foot slipped on a slick patch and she flailed, one choked gasp, a hand up. Angela was in the water before the sound finished, shoes and apron and all. She caught Emily under the arms and lifted, the girl coughing, hair plastered like seaweed. It was over in seconds, no drama, just the smallest turn toward disaster and a hand pulling it back. Victoria looked up, expression flat with inconvenience. "Now the deck is wet." Angela's lungs burned from the cold. She held Emily tighter. "It's okay," she whispered into the child's ear. "I've got you." She kissed the side of her wet head and tasted chlorine. Later, In her room, Angela wrung out her apron into the sink, water running clear, then slow, then gone. She watched until the last drop fell and told herself it meant something. It meant you could do everything right and still slip, and what saved you was who had their eyes on you. She reminded herself hers were always on Emily. The tension didn't spike, it thickened. Victoria began to appear at doorways more often, expectation painted on her face. "You're getting too familiar," she said once, after seeing Angela laugh with Emily over a crooked pancake. "Children need hierarchy, not buddies. They need safety," Angela said before she could drag the words back. The silence that followed was as dangerous as a cliff. "What did you say?" Victoria asked, voice low. Angela stared at the griddle. The pancake bubbled. "Yes, ma'am," she said, because sometimes that is the only sentence that keeps a roof over your head. On a grey Sunday, Victoria requested the good china for tea, then cancelled tea, then demanded coffee, then changed her mind to sparkling water poured like champagne. Each change came with a new instruction and a way to fail. Angela followed every pivot, moving her hands in precise circles, putting saucers back before the cupboard could miss them. Daniel came home early that evening, shoulders carrying the week. He loosened his tie and paused at the archway to watch Emily chase dust motes in a window beam. "How's my girl?" he asked, voice softer than the rest of him. Emily ran to him, laughter loud and sudden. Daniel swung her up, then down, a quick smooth arc. Angela turned to leave the scene to them. "Angela," Daniel said, stopping her with a nod that felt almost human. "She loves the braids." Angela's cheeks warmed. "She picks the ribbons," she said. He smiled, small. "Good taste." Then he looked past her and the softness hardened. Victoria had entered. Whatever had been between father and daughter switched off like a lamp. "We need to discuss the gala," Victoria said to Daniel. "Not in front of the staff." The door to the den closed with a quiet finality. Angela stood for a moment in the emptying light, feeling like someone who had heard music from another room and wasn't sure if she'd imagined it. The thing about houses like this is that they convince you, if you can keep everything shining, nothing bad will happen. Angela kept shining. She polished, pressed, planned, watched. She moved through rooms like an answer to a question no one wanted to ask. But fear has a way of sowing its own future. Angela started waking before her alarm, heart beating like she'd heard a shout. She started counting, steps to the stairs, 16, steps from the stairs to Emily's room, 22, breaths it took for Emily to fall asleep, usually 40, unless she had questions about space. She mapped the mansion into numbers she could hold. And still, there were moments that slipped. A vase she had dusted tipped when a door shut too hard 3 rooms away. A guest at the next gathering asked where the restroom was and, against the rules, thanked her for the directions. Angela said, "You're welcome," before she could help it and then stood very still, waiting for punishment that didn't come, that time. The house taught vigilance. The house taught apology. The house taught prediction. It did not teach mercy. One evening, Mrs. Green, a neighbor who came by with a casserole and too much perfume, cornered Angela near the mudroom. "You're new," she said, peering over cat-eye glasses. "How are you finding our queen?" Angela arranged her face into neutral. "The house is beautiful." Mrs. Green's smile curled like paper near flame. "Isn't it just? We used to say this street was quiet before the Morrisons moved in. Now it's important." She lowered her voice. "Do you know why the last girl left?" Angela shook her head. "She cried," Mrs. Green said, the word a pearl she enjoyed rolling on her tongue. "Can you imagine? In the foyer. It was vulgar." She patted Angela's arm with the airy pity of the comfortable. "I hope you're made of sterner stuff." Angela looked at the hand on her sleeve until it left. When Mrs. Green was gone, Angela stood in the mudroom alone, the smell of lilies and rain boots climbing the walls, and she let herself breathe the kind of breath that makes your ribs ache. She told herself she would not cry in the foyer. If she cried, it would be in the shower where the water could lie for her. That night, Emily came to the doorway of the staff hall and whispered, "Song." Angela followed her to the piano room, closing the door softly behind them. Emily sat, feet not quite touching the pedals, and placed her small hands on the keys. The first notes were shy, then braver, then something like a smile you could hear. The song, "Don't Leave," was only 12 bars, but it carried the weight of a life. When she finished, Emily looked over her shoulder. "It's beautiful," Angela said, throat tight. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" Emily asked. "Always," Angela said. She meant tonight. She meant as long as she could. She also meant a kind of forever that the house might not let her have. The week ended with weather warnings, wind, then sun, then wind again, like the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to be kind. Victoria announced another park afternoon because the air was unbearably stale in here, and children need sunshine or they turn into screens. Javier packed the SUV. Mrs. Patel pressed a small Tupperware into Angela's hand. "For you," she whispered. "You look like a person who forgets to eat when she worries." Angela almost said thank you out loud, "The way you say I'm still seen." Instead, she squeezed Mrs. Patel's fingers once. On the way out, Angela checked the backpack twice. Wipes, band-aids, sunscreen, water bottle, a folded gauze, a tiny bottle of hand sanitizer with a cartoon strawberry on it because Emily liked how it smelled. The SUV door closed. The garage opened. The driveway gave them back to the city. As they turned onto Crestwood, Angela glanced at the back seat. Emily smiled at her and held up the bunny, who now wore a ribbon the same blue as the girl's dress. "Ready?" Angela mouthed. Emily nodded. "Ready." Angela looked out at the road, at the world that kept going no matter what happened in the houses that hid behind gates. A feeling like static rose in her chest, not fear exactly, not yet, but its cousin. She placed a hand on the seat between her and Emily, palm open, not touching, a promise within reach. Wind moved the trees. The sky tried on a brighter color. Somewhere in the neighborhood a dog barked twice and stopped, as if it had remembered the rule about noise. Angela watched the world and waited for the next rule to reveal itself. Somewhere just ahead, the day was already making room for an event that hadn't happened yet. And though Angela couldn't name it, the house had trained her well enough to feel it coming. She didn't know it yet, but this poised silence, the kind that hums between a held breath and a shout, would be the last quiet moment before the world tested everything she'd promised. Some disasters don't roar in. They creep, quiet, patient, until the moment they strike. For Angela, that moment came on a breezy Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sky couldn't decide between sun and shadow. The neighborhood park was scattered with families, mothers unpacking sandwiches, fathers pushing strollers, children screaming with laughter. To anyone else, it was ordinary. But Angela had lived in the Morrison mansion long enough to know ordinary never stayed ordinary for long. She stood by the swings, eyes fixed on Emily, who soared higher and higher, legs pumping with determination. Every rise brought a squeal of joy, every fall a rush of wind that made her brown hair whip behind her. Angela's lips curved into the smallest smile. Moments like this were what kept her sane in that house, the proof that happiness still lived in Emily, even under her mother's shadow. Behind her, Victoria's voice cut through the laughter. "Angela, I need to speak with you. Now." Angela didn't turn. "I'm watching Emily, ma'am." "Don't make me repeat myself," Victoria snapped, standing a few feet away with her arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the playground like two cold mirrors. Angela hesitated. Her chest tightened. She glanced at Emily, still swinging, still safe. She took a step toward Victoria but kept her eyes on the child. "Yes, ma'am." I'm listening. Victoria leaned in, lowering her voice. Do you understand how fragile your position is? Don't mistake Emily's attachment for protection. You're here because I allow it, Angela. Nothing more. Angela's pulse hammered. She swallowed. I understand. Good. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Because the moment you forget, you'll be gone. Just like the others. A shout split the air. Angela's head whipped around. The swing was empty. Her heart stopped. Emily lay crumpled in the dirt a few yards away, her small body twisted unnaturally. A scream tore from her throat, high and shrill, cutting through every other sound in the park. Parents turned, children froze, but Angela was already running. Emily. She dropped to her knees, hands trembling as she reached for the girl. Emily clutched her arm, tears streaming down her face. The angle of it, bent where it shouldn't bend, made bile rise in Angela's throat. I'm here, baby. I'm here, she whispered, trying to steady her own voice even as panic clawed her chest. She brushed Emily's hair back, kissed her forehead, fought to breathe. You're okay. You're okay. Just hold on to me. Victoria arrived seconds later, heels stabbing the dirt, her voice a shriek. What did you do? Angela looked up, stunned. She fell, I was right here. You were supposed to be watching her. Victoria's face flushed red, her hands shaking as she pulled Emily against her. The little girl screamed louder at the touch, her broken arm jostled. Angela reached out instinctively. Careful. Please. Her arm. Don't you tell me how to hold my child. Victoria snapped. She rounded on Angela, fury spilling from every syllable. This is your fault. Do you hear me? Your fault. The crowd thickened. A father offered to call 911, a mother fetched ice. Someone muttered, poor child. But Angela heard only Emily's cries and Victoria's accusations, each one striking like a whip. Her mind screamed back, I told you I was watching her. You distracted me. You made me turn away. But her lips stayed shut. She knew the truth didn't matter here. Power always spoke louder than reality. The ambulance came with its screaming siren, doors swinging open. Paramedics rushed in, lifting Emily onto a stretcher, stabilizing her tiny arm with practiced hands. Angela tried to climb in after them, but Victoria blocked her. You've done enough. Angela froze. Her hands, still trembling, curled into fists at her sides. Emily reached out weakly from the stretcher, eyes wide with fear. Angela. She cried, voice breaking. Angela's chest shattered. I'll be right behind you, sweetheart, she called, though she knew Victoria would never allow it. The ambulance doors slammed shut. The siren wailed, carrying Emily away. Angela stood in the dust of the playground, her apron streaked with dirt, her knees bruised from the fall. Parents whispered as they dispersed. Some gave her pitying looks. Others looked at her like she was the villain. And through the chaos, one truth settled heavy in her chest. Everything had changed. The house that night was unbearable. The air felt colder, heavier, every chandelier crystal glinting like judgment. Victoria stormed through the halls, barking orders at staff, her voice cracking like thunder. Daniel returned from the hospital late, his tie loose, his face pale. How is she? Angela asked quietly, stepping from the shadows of the kitchen. Daniel hesitated. His shoulders sagged. Broken arm. She'll be in a cast for months. He looked at Angela, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes, not cruelty, not indifference, but exhaustion. She kept asking for you. Angela's throat tightened. I should have been with her in the ambulance. Victoria wouldn't allow it, Daniel said, cutting her off. His voice was low, defeated. You know how she is. Angela wanted to scream, to tell him he could have overruled his wife, that he was the father. But she bit it back. Power didn't bend here. Not even to blood. From upstairs, Victoria's voice rang out. Angela. Angela flinched. Yes, ma'am. Victoria appeared at the top of the staircase, her face twisted with rage. You are on thin ice. Do you understand? My daughter could have died because of your negligence. Angela's jaw clenched. Ma'am, I was. Don't you dare make excuses. Victoria's voice echoed through the mansion. One more mistake, and you're gone. And I'll make sure no agency in this city hires you again. Do you hear me? Angela's lips pressed tight. Yes, ma'am. Victoria smirked, satisfied with the surrender. She turned and disappeared into Emily's room, slamming the door behind her. Angela stood frozen in the hall, her fists trembling, her chest aching. Upstairs, Emily whimpered softly, her cries muffled through the closed door. Angela closed her eyes, tears finally spilling over. In that moment, she realized something chilling. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It wasn't even about survival. It was about Emily. That little girl needed someone to fight for her. And if Angela didn't, who would? Angela sat in her room long after midnight, the house silent except for the ticking grandfather clock in the hall. She stared at Emily's crayon drawings taped above her bed, stick figures holding hands, hearts drawn in shaky red, the words "don't leave" scrawled in a child's hand. She traced the drawings with her fingers, whispering, I won't leave you, baby. I won't. But the truth hung heavy in her heart. She had promised something the mansion might not let her keep. Because in that house, nothing stayed whole. Not maids. Not families. Not even little girls. And Angela had just learned the hard way, the Morrison mansion always collected its price. The accident didn't end at the playground. It followed Angela home, seeping into every corner of the Morrison mansion like a ghost that refused to leave. The cast on Emily's arm was bright pink, covered in doodles and "get well soon" messages from classmates, but in Victoria's eyes it wasn't a cast, it was a scarlet letter. Every time she saw it, her gaze sharpened, turning like a knife toward Angela. You were supposed to protect her, Victoria hissed the first evening, as Angela carefully helped Emily into bed. And instead, you nearly killed her. Angela wanted to scream. You distracted me. You made me turn away. But she bit her tongue until it ached. Words were dangerous here. Words could be twisted into nooses. Emily, her cheeks still streaked from tears, clung to Angela's hand. It wasn't her fault, Mommy. Angela didn't let go of me. I slipped. Enough, Emily. Victoria's voice was cold, final. Go to sleep. But after she swept from the room, slamming the door behind her, Emily whispered into the darkness, Don't leave me, Angela. Promise. Angela kissed her hair, her chest tightening. I promise, baby. But the word promise felt heavier every time she said it. Every week, Emily had follow-up appointments for her arm. The SUV would roll to the curb, Javier at the wheel, Victoria climbing in with oversized sunglasses, and Emily holding Angela's hand until the last possible second. Angela can come too, right? Emily asked one morning, her voice trembling. No, Victoria said sharply, peeling the girl's fingers away. Hospitals are no place for the help. Angela crouched, pressing a soft kiss to Emily's cheek. I'll be here when you get back. Emily's hazel eyes filled with tears. You promise? I promise, Angela whispered, even though the word tasted like guilt. She stood on the driveway as the SUV pulled away, Emily's small hand pressed to the glass, waving until the car turned the corner. Every time, Angela stood there long after they were gone, her heart aching with helplessness. The accident became Victoria's favorite weapon. She wove it into conversation like a thread of poison. At dinner parties, she'd smile tightly at guests and say, "Well, of course Emily's recovery has been difficult. Our maid let her fall at the playground, if you can believe it." Some guests gasped in horror, others clucked their tongues sympathetically. A few glanced at Angela with open disdain, as if she were a criminal sitting at the table instead of a servant standing by the wall. Angela kept her chin down, cheeks burning. Every word cut, but she swallowed them all. One evening, as she poured wine for a guest, Victoria's voice rose again. "Imagine trusting someone with your only child, and they can't even manage to keep her upright on a swing." The guest, a tall man with silver hair, chuckled. "That's why we don't keep staff too long. Get attached, and they start thinking they belong." Angela's hands trembled as she set the bottle down. She wanted to hurl it across the room, to scream at them all. But she only whispered, "Yes, ma'am," when Victoria glanced at her smugly, as if daring her to speak. Daniel was no better. One night, Angela caught him alone in the study, tie loosened, whiskey glass in hand. She hesitated, then stepped in. "Sir," she said quietly, I need you to know I never stopped watching her. She slipped so fast." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temple. "Angela, don't. Victoria has made up her mind." "But you were there. You saw." "I saw my daughter with a broken arm," he interrupted, his voice flat. "That's all anyone will remember." Angela's chest clenched. "So I'll just carry the blame forever?" Daniel's eyes flicked up at her. For a moment, she thought she saw regret, maybe even guilt. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He lifted his glass. "In this house, blame is currency. And you don't get to choose how it's spent." He turned back to his desk, dismissing her with silence. Angela walked out trembling, the taste of rage sharp on her tongue. If Victoria's cruelty deepened, so did Emily's love. The little girl followed Angela everywhere, her cast tucked against her chest like fragile glass. She wanted Angela to read her bedtime stories, to help her with homework, to sit by her bed until she fell asleep. "Promise you won't go," she whispered every night, her good hand gripping Angela's tightly. Angela stroked her hair, heart heavy. "I'm right here, baby. I'm not going anywhere." But every time she said it, a voice inside her whispered back, "How long can you really stay?" The breaking point came at another dinner party, a month after the accident. Angela had been instructed to serve canapés, delicate pastries stacked on silver trays. She moved quietly, offering them to guests, keeping her eyes down. Victoria's laughter rang across the room. "Our maid here has been quite the scandal lately," she said loudly, gesturing toward Angela. "Imagine, letting a child fall and break her arm. Incompetence at its finest." The guests laughed. Not all of them cruelly, but enough. One woman whispered, "How dreadful," shaking her head. Another chuckled, "Good help is so hard to find." Angela's cheeks burned. Her hands trembled as she set the tray down, eyes blurring with unshed tears. And then, Emily's small voice rang out, louder than the adults. It wasn't her fault. The room fell silent. Emily stood in the doorway, cast still wrapped in pink, her eyes blazing. "It wasn't Angela's fault. Mommy made her look away. She didn't let go of me, I fell." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face turned to stone. "Emily," she hissed, "that's enough." But the girl stomped her foot. "No. It's the truth." She turned to Angela, tears welling. "Don't leave me, Angela. Please." Angela's heart cracked in two. She wanted to scoop Emily up, to run from that house and never look back. But she stood frozen, the weight of a dozen stares pressing her into silence. Victoria crossed the room in 2 swift steps, her hand gripping Emily's good arm. You will not speak out of turn, she snapped. Apologize. Now. Emily's lip trembled, but she refused to look away from Angela. I won't. Victoria's face darkened, her nails digging into the child's sleeve. Go to your room. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She tore free, running to Angela, wrapping her good arm around her waist. Don't let her send you away, she sobbed. Angela bent down, hugging the girl tightly, her own tears spilling over at last. I'm here, baby. I'm here. But deep inside, she knew something terrifying, she couldn't keep that promise forever. Not in this house. Not under Victoria's shadow. And every day she stayed. She was breaking a little more. Sometimes survival isn't about holding on, it's about choosing where you refuse to be broken. The Morrison mansion had taught Angela a lot, the sound a crystal glass makes when it's judged, the weight of a stare that turns people into furniture, the way fear can learn your name and answer for you. It had also taught her that love shows up like a reflex, the way her body moved before her mind when Emily slipped, the way her hands learned the child's rhythms, the way mothers learn a newborn's cry. For months, those two truths, fear and love, had held her in place like two hands around her throat and her heart. But on an ordinary Thursday, the scale finally tipped. Morning light slid across marble like water. Angela wiped a non-existent smear from the kitchen island, listening to the house breathe its expensive silence. Upstairs, Emily hummed through her toothbrushing, a shaky, stubborn little tune that Angela now knew by heart, Don't Leave. Downstairs, Victoria's hello never came. It never did. She didn't greet staff. She summoned them. Angela, Mrs. Patel murmured, passing a warm plate of brioche. You didn't sleep. Didn't need to, Angela said, but her voice sounded far away, like it was coming through glass. She'd lain awake and measured the night by the hall clock, 1/4 past, 1/2 past, 1/4 to. She'd told the ceiling the truth, if I stay, I'll turn into something I won't recognize. Footsteps. The familiar click of command entered the room. Victoria surveyed the setup as if dignity were cutlery to be arranged. The luncheon has moved up, she said, not looking at Angela. And I want the Sèvres china, not the Bernardot. Also, you will keep your distance from my guests. No speaking unless spoken to. No lingering. No mistakes. Yes, ma'am, Angela said, folding the word around the splinters inside her. And Angela? Victoria's eyes found her, cold, exact. Stop telling my daughter fairy tales about loyalty. Children confuse affection for authority. She needs hierarchy, not sentiment. Angela felt the sentence like a slap she'd already learned to absorb. She placed the brioche in the warming drawer and kept her hands from shaking by force. Upstairs, the humming stopped. Angela? Emily called. Can you tie my ribbon? Go, Mrs. Patel whispered. Before the storm has an excuse. Angela went. In Emily's room, pink sunlight climbed the wallpaper. The little girl sat at the vanity with her cast resting on the table, a navy ribbon lying like a river across her lap. Will you make it into a bow like the piano teacher does? Emily asked, cheeks bright with effort. Only prettier. Prettier is our specialty, Angela said, smiling with her whole face because the child always deserved the whole thing. She smoothed the ribbon, looped, tucked, pulled, a small grace in a house that hoarded them. Then she stood back. There. Astronaut level bow. Emily giggled. Astronauts don't wear bows. They would if you designed the suits. Angela set the brush down. How's the arm today? Less achy? A little. Emily's eyes, those brave hazel eyes, lifted. Do you still promise? The question slid under Angela's ribs and stayed there. She took the child's good hand. I promise to keep you safe, she said carefully. Even when that means being brave in ways that don't look like staying. Emily's mouth shook. I don't want you to be brave that way. I know, Angela whispered, and kissed her hair. The house changed costumes the way a stage does, floral arrangements, place cards, lighting calibrated for admiration. Guests arrived in drifts of perfume and soft laughter. Angela moved like choreography, pour, step, turn, place. She thought of Marcus in his math class, tongue pinched between his teeth when he concentrates, and told herself, you are leaving for him. You are leaving because what monsters ask for first is your voice, and he needs to hear yours. At the far end of the room, Daniel appeared, late sunlight on his cufflinks. He gave Emily a little smile that died when Victoria glanced over. Marriage here was a treaty, not a story. Daniel drifted to donors. Victoria drifted to control. Halfway through the second course, Victoria's voice arced through the talk like a thrown knife. We've had a trying season, she said, fingers skimming her glass stem. Our poor Emily's arm, you can imagine. When help fails you, you reevaluate everything. A sympathetic murmur. Angela felt the words land on her back like a coat she'd never chosen. She placed a plate at seat 9, pivoted, and caught the look from seat 3, pity mixed with superiority, the cocktail of people who never worry about rent. Seat 3 smiled at Victoria. You must replace them more often. Sentiment is the enemy of standards. Angela set the last plate down just as the room tilted, not physically, but morally, toward a place she could not follow. She felt the shift like gravity remembering itself. Then, a little voice from the doorway, small and ringing, it wasn't Angela's fault. The room hushed. Emily stood there with her cast resting against the frame, chin up. She didn't make me fall. Mommy made her talk to her. I slipped. In the stillness that followed, you could hear embarrassment changing hands. Daniel's face tightened. A guest coughed. Someone said, oh, in the way that means we heard the thing we did not want to. Victoria's smile thinned to wire. Emily. Not now. It's the truth, Emily said, and looked straight at Angela. Don't leave me. The plea finished the job the months had started. The truth was no longer bearable, and the lie was no longer survivable. Angela set the tray down with a care that said finality. Her voice, when it came, surprised even her, it was calm. Full. Mrs. Morrison, she said, meeting Victoria's eyes across the bone-white table. I resign. Daniel blinked. A fork chimed against porcelain. The chandelier gathered breath. Victoria laughed, a sound with edges. No, you don't. I decide who leaves. Not anymore, Angela said, and the sentence laid itself across the tablecloth like a clean line. Back in her small room, the air felt different, like a door had been opened somewhere inside her body. Angela pulled the suitcase from the closet. It wasn't much, 2 uniforms, 3 church dresses, sneakers, sandals, the sweater her mother had knit the winter Marcus had pneumonia and they'd both slept upright in the ER. There came the softest knock. Emily slipped in, bunny in the crook of her good arm. When she saw the suitcase, something in her face broke without sound. She climbed onto the bed and sat very straight, as if posture could keep the rest of her from falling. Am I in trouble? She asked. No, Angela said quickly, kneeling so they were level. You told the truth. The truth is brave. I'm proud of you. Then why are you leaving? Angela pressed her palm to the cast, careful. Because sometimes leaving is how grown-ups tell the truth, too. I don't want the truth, Emily said in a rush. I want you. I want me to be me when you see me, Angela said, and let the child hear the wobble in her breath. I can't be that if I stay. Tears filled the hazel eyes. Will you forget me? Never, Angela said, fierce and clear. Do you hear me? Never. Emily nodded once, solemn. Then she slid something from beneath her pillow, a folded sheet of staff paper. Across the top, in pencil, the title, "Don't Leave." The notes explained themselves in a child's hand. "For when you miss me," she whispered. "Play it and pretend I'm in the next room." Angela took the page like it was made of air and miracles. "I'll frame it," she said. "And I'll practice." "Promise?" "I promise." The door swung wide without a knock. Victoria stood there, fury and fear held together with willpower. "Get up," she said to Emily, not looking at Angela. "Go to your room." Emily didn't move. She clutched Angela's arm, eyes blazing. "Emily," Angela said softly. "It's okay." The child slid off the bed but did not let go. She turned to her mother, voice trembling and huge. "If she goes, I won't talk at dinner." "You will do as you're told," Victoria snapped. Angela rose. "Mrs. Morrison." Victoria's gaze whipped to her. "What?" "You asked for standards," Angela said, the words steady, not sharp. "Here are mine. I don't work where threats raise children. I don't work where truth is punished. And I don't work where love is treated like insubordination." "Name your price," Victoria said so fast it startled them both. Silence. Even Emily blinked. "Double," Victoria said, stepping in. "Your own room. A title. Household manager. Benefits. Whatever you think you're worth." Her voice cracked on the last word, as if the shape of it didn't fit her mouth. "Just, stay." Angela felt the offer glance off her like a stone off water. Money had saved them many times, paid late bills, turned the lights back on. But this was not a bill money could settle. "You don't want me," Angela said gently. "You want control. You think you'll find better?" Victoria's voice found its bite again. "Out there. You'll be invisible." Angela lifted the staff paper between them, the 12 bars of a child's courage. "Out there," she said, "I'll be mine." Daniel appeared behind Victoria as if summoned by finishing lines. He looked at the suitcase, then at Angela, then at his wife, and made the smallest, bravest decision of his life. He stepped aside. Angela zipped the bag. Emily threw her good arm around Angela's waist. "Play the song," she whispered into the fabric. "Promise." "Every night," Angela said, and believed it. She walked out of the Morrison wing with her shoulders back and her heart loud. Javier was waiting at the service door, cap in his hands, eyes bright with the kind of respect people rarely give and never forget. Mrs. Patel pressed a foil-wrapped parcel into Angela's palm. "Paratha," she said. "For strength." Angela hugged them both in the space the house had never allowed. "Thank you," she whispered, and meant for more than the bread. The gate opened. The air outside felt like something you don't appreciate until it's taken, ordinary freedom. She didn't look back. The apartment smelled like detergent and sun. Marcus ran at her full speed, 11 now and all knees and joy, and slammed into her midsection with a hug that reset her heart. "You're really home?" he asked into her shirt. "I'm really home." Her mother, apron dusted with flour, stood in the kitchenette and worked tears away with the back of her wrist. "Sit," she said. "Eat. Then tell me what you're going to do next." "Sleep," Angela said, laughing into the crying. "Then something that doesn't require whispering." What came next wasn't glamorous. It was good. She took a job at Bright Steps Learning Center, a small daycare 2 bus rides away, where the toys were a little scuffed and the gratitude was spoken out loud. She learned the names of 27 children and the favorite snack of each. She played the 12-bar song in the staff room during lunch until the notes stopped shaking. Nights belonged to Marcus and homework and spiced rice and the sound of neighbors living near enough to be real. On Sundays, church. On the way home, ice cream, even when the budget said be sensible, because freedom tastes like a cone sometimes. The first month, she woke from dreams of the chandelier humming like a wasp. The second month, she didn't. By the third, she could say the name Morrison without her tongue finding the word sorry next to it. She was okay. Not rich. Not ruined. Okay. Sometimes that is the miracle. It was October when the past found her, bright and brittle. Fall festival day at bright steps, paper leaves, face paint, parents balancing cider and strollers. Angela manned the ring toss, a loop of carnival laughter around her. Marcus worked the popcorn machine like an engineer. Angela. She knew the voice before the word finished. A silk scarf. Sunglasses that hid and announced. Victoria Morrison, out of uniform, no staff, no house to enlarge her. Behind her, a smaller light, Emily, caste-free now, hair ribbon navy, holding a paper cone of kettle corn she wasn't eating. Angela straightened, felt the old instinct, brace, obey, and then let it pass. Hello, Mrs. Morrison. Victoria, the woman said too quickly, like the syllables might change the math. She glanced at the chaos, glitter stuck to concrete, a toddler in a lion hoodie roaring at a bubble. She looked smaller here, as if size had been a house trick. I need to discuss a position, she said, and her voice chose business because it didn't trust feeling. Household manager. Full autonomy. Triple your last salary. A signed contract. Anything you need, I can do that. Emily's recovery was better with you. We need you. A month ago, that sentence would have hooked the softest parts of Angela. Today, it made her sad the way a bruise makes you careful. You don't need me, Angela said quietly. You need to change the way your house speaks. Something in Victoria's face flinched. She swallowed. I can't change overnight. Then start by not threatening the people who raise your child's heartbeat, Angela said. Start by telling her bedtime stories yourself. Victoria's chin trembled once, a microquake. I don't know how. Tell her the one where you learned, Angela said, not unkind. That's a good first story. Between them, a smaller voice, can I hug you? Emily asked, eyes huge. Angela crouched, arms open. The girl stepped in and wrapped herself around the center of Angela's life. She smelled like kettle corn and shampoo. I play the song, Angela whispered into her hair. Every night. Emily leaned back, smiling wet. I knew you would. They let go. The world, stubbornly, was still the world, rings to toss, popcorn to burn, a little boy waving from the machine with a face that said, is that your friend? And a woman learning how to apologize without saying the word. I understand, Victoria said finally, and to her credit, she did not bargain again. If you ever change your mind. I won't, Angela said, and it wasn't cruel, it was clean. But I hope your house does. Victoria nodded once, as if accepting a sentence that was also a map. She reached for Emily's hand and, for the first time in Angela's memory, held it right. They walked away. Emily looked back and wiggled her fingers goodbye. Angela wiggled hers back and felt the leaving land inside her in the place where grief and relief share a wall. Marcus appeared with a bag of popcorn and a grin. You okay, Mom? She laughed. It startled a flock of birds from the trees. I'm perfect. Want a taste? He offered the bag the exact way her baby once offered her toy cars. She took a handful and chewed freedom. At home that night, Angela framed the staff paper in an old thrift store frame and hung it above the small keyboard she'd bought secondhand. She played Don't Leave soft enough not to bother the neighbors and clear enough to tell the room the truth. Her phone buzzed, Mrs. Patel, come by Saturday. I made too much. Javier, got a new route. Honk if you need a ride. The world had moved on without turning cruel for it. Angela texted back thank yous and good lucks and then sat at the keyboard with Marcus beside her, his shoulder warm against hers. That your song? He asked. It's ours, she said, and started again, slower, so he could learn the shape of it. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, so did she. Sometimes wealth is a prison with chandeliers, sometimes freedom is a small apartment that smells like detergent and hope. Angela had given the mansion her labor. She kept her soul. She would not go back. What would you choose? Would you stay for the money, or walk away like Angela to protect your peace and dignity? If this story moved you, like the video. Tell me your choice in the comments. For more powerful, human stories every week, subscribe and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs the reminder, freedom is a decision.